Hi there. This is the code for file reading, and let me just show you first my sample file that I want to read in this code. This is called numbers.txt, and I've written some data over here. It says, hi, this is my sample file for reading and writing. I'm going to use a combination of strings, integers, and floats or decimal numbers. And then I've got some integers and I've got some floats in this file. So 1.4, the point in this file where 1.4 ends this is actually the end of file. So after that I haven't written any data, so this will be marked as end of file, the point where data in the file ends. So this is end of file. Now let's go to our code and review what it says. I created the file handling read project. I've got a main function and I did all my coding in the main function. A main function throws an IO exception because since our class doesn't find the text file that we're talking about that we want it to read, it will throw this IO exception. I've got the complete address, complete path of my text file that I want to read stored in a string called file name. I've got the objects of file reader class and buffer reader class declared in these lines. And now I am instantiating the two objects fr and br, file reader and buffer reader, here. The object of file reader class, when instantiated, calls the constructor, and since we know the constructor accepts this path of the file as an object. Then I've got a buffer reader class. This class accepts the object of file reader as a parameter. The constructor of the buffer class accepts the object of file reader class as a parameter. So here these two classes are now instantiated. Buffer reader actually has to work alongside with file reader class. That is why, because file reader class has the name of the file, so it comes here, and then buffer reader can do its magic. Since for reading I am using file readers classes method called read, this method reads the data that's written in the text file as integers. So anything that it reads, any value that it reads, will be stored in a variable called read value. Now this variable is of type integer. The code here says keep on reading these values from the file and keep on storing them as integers in this data, in this variable, until the end of file has been found, until you reach the end of the file. And what you need to do with this data? Well, I'm simply printing it on the console. But how am I printing it? Since I've got characters, strings, integers, floats in the file, and read function can only read integers, so it will read them as integers, store them in the integer variable. In order to get them back in their original form, I am typecasting this variable over here. So that's all the data will be read one by one onto your console until end of file has been found. Now you can see that I have enclosed these lines in a try block. This is my try block. That's because if at any point in time in future the file does not exist in its path then this program will generate an exception. It will throw the exception, which will be caught by this exception handler, and the exception will be printed. File is not in its place, file does not exist. You can give all sorts of messages over here. I'm only printing the stack trace. Now at the end, I've used a finally block, which is actually used to close the streams, file reader and buffer reader classes. So if anything happens, if the program executes properly, or if file is never found and program doesn't program is not executed, finally block will be executed and it will close BR and FR objects. Let me play this, execute this program for you and see what happens. I hope you do remember what I had on my text file, or let me just show it to you once more. This is my text file. Yeah, so it says, hi there, this is a sample file, blah blah blah, and we've got all these numbers. So let's see if the same thing is printed. Play. Yeah, so it's printing the same thing. Hi, this is my simple file, and blah blah blah, and these numbers until the end of the file. Now, I have used the read function of a file readers object, or file readers class's read function. What if I use the read function of BR class? Now let's execute the program once again. Oh, okay, so it basically performs the same operation. They both work the same way. Now, if you remember, we had a function called readline in BR. So how are we going to use it? Let me just put these in comments and asterisk and a slash. So what if I write BR, no, I want to print system.out.println, println what, BR dot, it will give me the whole list of functions that I could use, read, and I am going to use readline method. So let's see what it prints. So our readline method has printed the first line for me over here. Now if we just copy this line and paste it again. So I wanted to read first line and print it on the console. Then I wanted to read second line and print it on the console. Let's see what it does. Okay, I wanted to do it again. So it has printed the first line, then I had a space, and now it has printed the third line. If I want to use readline method in this while, let's see how we could do that. So I won't be needing this integer because readline returns the string. I won't be using this, so let's just remove unnecessary data. Okay, so surely we won't be using this. br.read line until we've got a null. So in case of reading integers, -1 is the end of file, and in case if you are reading strings, null would be the end of line. So now we have to remove it, and we will simply say that you write br.read line, br.read line. So let me just function. Oh, it has read null. Oh yes, that's because we have to give a string variable called value and read whatever you're reading, save it in it, and until, yeah, that's how it works. So now what I'm doing is reading a line, storing it in a string and printing that string. It is reading the lines, storing them in strings, and then printing them. So obviously it's not printing the kite returns. It's just simply printing all the data. Okay, so this is how we read data onto our data from our file. I hope you did understand it. If there are any questions, if you need any more help, just let me know.